Marcus Whitfield inherited his grandmother Eleanor Whitfield's 2-acre property in Pinedale, Colorado, a 1940s farmhouse with a chicken coop, tool shed, and gardens that had weathered decades of mountain winters. The land was quiet, set among pine slopes where Eleanor had lived since the 1940s. When Marcus, a retired Army electrician, moved in after his divorce, he expected solitude. Instead, he became the focus of the local homeowners association, whose president, Bethany Cromwell, exercised near-total control over a 4-person board. Within weeks of his arrival, a violation notice appeared on his front door. The HOA demanded removal of what it called non-conforming structures, the chicken coop and tool shed, structures that predated the HOA by half a century. The fine began at $150 per day, effective immediately. Marcus initially dismissed it as a clerical mistake, but enforcement escalated quickly. Bethany began weekly inspections, arriving unannounced with clipboard and camera, recording dimensions of fences and garden features, noting vehicle placement, and citing supposed infractions under community standards. When repeated notices arrived, Marcus visited the county courthouse to verify building codes and deed history. The records were clear. His grandmother's outbuildings were legal, maintained continuously, and grandfathered under county ordinances. But a larger discrepancy emerged in the course of his review. Comparing county survey maps against the HOA's recorded boundaries, he discovered an error of approximately 50 feet on several parcels, including his own. According to official plat records and Eleanor's 1943 deed, his property had never been part of any HOA jurisdiction. To formalize his position, Marcus sent certified letters to the HOA, enclosing copies of surveys, county filings, and Eleanor's deed. The correspondence outlined his findings that the association lacked legal authority over his parcel and requested immediate cessation of fines. The letters were ignored. In their place came further inspection visits, new violation notices, and additional penalties. The dispute, at its core, was not yet about harassment or property damage. It was about governance boundaries. Marcus's documentation challenged the HOA's foundation and exposed a structural flaw in its incorporation. Instead of correcting the record, the board's president chose escalation. This early exchange, official letters unanswered, enforcement intensifying, set the trajectory for a conflict that would evolve from clerical overreach into a full-scale legal and community crisis in the months ahead. Following his initial dispute over jurisdiction, Marcus Whitfield's experience within Pinedale's 47-home development shifted from procedural disagreement to systematic enforcement. The pattern began with unannounced inspections. HOA President Bethany Cromwell arrived frequently, often without prior notice, carrying a measuring tape and digital camera. She documented details as minute as the height of fence posts, grass length near the property line, and the position of Marcus's work truck in his driveway. Reports followed each visit, citing new violations under vague standards such as aesthetic uniformity and property value preservation. Marcus soon learned that his case was not isolated. Other longtime residents, the original families whose homes predated the HOA's formation, were experiencing similar treatment. Harold, his 70-year-old neighbor, received fines for his late wife's memorial garden, allegedly for using unapproved landscape materials. Sarah Chin, a young mother of 2, was cited for her children's swing set, which the board claimed disrupted sight lines along the cul-de-sac. Several residents, exhausted by fees and hearings, had sold their properties and left the community entirely. The enforcement, always backed by formal language, created an atmosphere of intimidation cloaked in administrative legitimacy. Neighborhood meetings, once social gatherings, became confrontational. Bethany chaired each session like a courtroom, controlling discussion, overruling objections, and silencing dissent. Residents who questioned fines were threatened with additional penalties. Notes from these meetings showed that all votes passed unanimously, reflecting not consensus but compliance driven by fear of reprisal. The meetings reinforced Bethany's authority and revealed how the HOA structure allowed a small board to dominate a much larger community. The harassment extended beyond formal inspections. Anonymous complaints began appearing in county records, accusations of excessive noise during the day, suspicious activity when Marcus assisted neighbors with home repairs, and allegations that an old oak tree on his land obstructed the neighborhood's visual character. Each report triggered official correspondence, increasing Marcus's paper burden and reinforcing an image of non-compliance. The most consequential event came when a county code enforcement officer appeared, investigating an anonymous complaint alleging Marcus operated an illegal auto repair business. Photographs attached to the complaint depicted his driveway with several vehicles, tools visible nearby. In truth, he had been helping neighbors with electrical work. After inspection, the officer found no violation, but filed the report regardless, marking the first official record of alleged misconduct. That visit convinced Marcus to install 8 security cameras with cloud storage and motion alerts. His intent was not confrontation but documentation, a safeguard against a system that appeared determined to misrepresent him. The cameras would soon reveal how deeply the pattern extended. Once the surveillance system was installed, Marcus Whitfield shifted from defense to documentation. 8 high-definition cameras now monitored every angle of his 2-acre property, each equipped with motion sensors, audio capture, and cloud backup. The first recordings appeared less than a week later. At 5:47 a.m., a motion alert on his phone displayed the unmistakable figure of HOA President Bethany Cromwell, moving across his backyard in near darkness. She carried a clipboard and telephoto camera, photographing his workshop windows and electrical panel. The audio captured her voice clearly. "If I can get pictures of his equipment, I can prove he's running unlicensed contracting work." This recording marked the first verifiable evidence of trespass and intent. Over the next month, the footage multiplied. The system logged 14 separate entries onto his property by Bethany, each occurring before sunrise or after dark. On one occasion, she measured fence posts and took soil samples near his vegetable garden. Another clip showed her photographing his meter box and recording readings without authorization. Each file was time-stamped, securely uploaded and indexed by Marcus with corresponding notes. The cameras also captured external activity linked to Cromwell Excavation, a company owned by Bethany's partner. Trucks bearing the company's logo appeared repeatedly, surveying along Marcus's boundary line. Workers used measuring instruments, drove stakes into the soil, and discussed easements and potential trenching. Their movements suggested preparation for earthwork, but no official notice or county permit accompanied the activity. The cumulative footage created an objective record that replaced speculation with evidence. Dates, times, and identities were indisputable. The documentation provided context to prior complaints, showing that many accusations had been preceded by unauthorized visits from the very person filing them. Marcus archived every incident in chronological order, creating a verifiable timeline of trespassing and boundary interference. For the first time, the situation moved beyond conflicting narratives to tangible proof of pattern and purpose. The footage transformed his defense strategy. What had begun as his attempt to protect personal privacy had become the foundation for demonstrating systematic misconduct under the guise of HOA enforcement. The recordings, preserved and time-stamped, would soon connect directly to public property records, revealing that the actions surrounding his land were part of a wider sequence within the entire development. The security footage provided immediate protection, but Marcus understood that documenting trespass alone would not expose the larger pattern forming around his neighborhood. To understand how enforcement connected to profit, he turned to the county courthouse requesting access to property sales records and historical HOA filings. Stacks of transaction ledgers and recorded deeds soon revealed a timeline that mirrored his own experience. Over the past 3 years, 6 homes within the 47-lot development had been sold under distress, each following extended periods of fines, violation notices, or legal disputes initiated by the HOA. The sale prices told their own story. Each property had transferred for $15,000 to $40,000 below local market value. Marcus cross-referenced the buyer information with state business records and discovered that 4 of the 6 homes were purchased by Cromwell Properties LLC, a firm registered to Bethany Cromwell and her husband. 2 additional homes were acquired by subsidiaries sharing the same mailing address. Within months of each sale, those homes were listed again, renovated, staged, and sold to new buyers at full market value, generating significant profit. Marcus compiled the dates, addresses, and transaction amounts into a simple timeline. The sequence was consistent. Extended HOA enforcement, rising penalties threatened legal action, then a pressured sale to a Cromwell-affiliated entity. This pattern, verified through public documentation, turned isolated complaints into a recognizable system. The discovery also validated the accounts of neighbors who had left quietly under financial stress. Harold's recollection about the couple next door matched one of the courthouse entries. They had sold for $35,000 under appraisal after a year of disputes over non-compliant landscaping. Another file showed Sarah Chen's former neighbor selling after multiple safety violations were issued regarding playground equipment. The progression repeated across the development: disputes, fines, departure, resale. Marcus stopped short of interpreting motive, but the pattern's financial outcome was unmistakable. Repeated enforcement against long-standing residents appeared to funnel property ownership toward entities managed by the same individual leading the chart, and the finding transformed a neighborhood feud into an issue of potential financial manipulation through procedural enforcement. By compiling deeds, notarized filings, and verified purchase records, Marcus established the 3 pillars of his future case: the jurisdictional flaw excluding his property from the HOA, the pattern of disproportionate enforcement against original residents, and the consistent benefit to Cromwell-linked companies. Together, these formed the factual groundwork for further investigation. The turning point in Marcus Whitfield's dispute came early one morning when a sheriff's deputy arrived at his door with legal papers. The document, an ex parte emergency injunction, prohibited him from conducting any electrical work on his own property for 30 days. The order cited credible safety concerns and multiple complaints from neighboring homeowners. Marcus was stunned. The hearing that produced the injunction had occurred the previous afternoon without his knowledge or opportunity to appear. Attached affidavits included statements from individuals he had never met, and 3 expert witnesses, all affiliated with the law firm where Bethany Cromwell's husband practiced, had testified that his workshop posed a community fire hazard. The immediate consequences were severe. Marcus lost nearly $8,000 in scheduled electrical jobs as customers canceled, unwilling to engage someone labeled under court restriction. His own kitchen renovation stalled mid-project, wires hanging unfinished in the ceiling. The injunction signaled that the campaign against him had shifted from administrative pressure to legal containment. Recognizing that self-defense was no longer enough, Marcus sought professional help. He hired Diane Kozlowski, a retired sheriff's detective with a reputation for uncovering small-town corruption cases. Her first task was to trace the flow of money surrounding the HOA's enforcement activities and associated property transfers. Within weeks, Diane's findings confirmed a troubling concentration of ownership. Cromwell Properties had purchased 6 homes within the development at 15% to 30% below market value, producing more than $300,000 in commissions and resale profit over 2 years. The timing of each acquisition corresponded closely with residents' violation disputes and escalating fines. Diane also uncovered a network of personal connections reinforcing the pattern. The county code enforcement officer who had previously visited Marcus's property was a college roommate of Bethany Cromwell. The judge who had signed the emergency injunction was a regular golf partner of Bethany's husband. Even a city councilman who had supported expedited zoning approvals for the HOA shared a family relationship with the Cromwells. While none of these ties proved misconduct on their own, they revealed an ecosystem of influence. When Bethany later demanded Marcus remove his security cameras within 48 hours, claiming privacy violations, Diane found direct contradictions in HOA bylaws explicitly authorizing cameras for community safety. Photographs surfaced of Bethany personally assisting favored neighbors with camera installations only weeks earlier. This selective enforcement would soon become pivotal evidence. As the investigation expanded, a new motive surfaced that redefined the entire conflict. Through audio surveillance, Marcus captured a recorded conversation in which Bethany Cromwell stated, "Once we eliminate these stubborn old families, we'll control the mineral rights to the entire development." Those few words reframed years of harassment into a clear, strategic objective. Beneath the mountain neighborhood lay natural gas reserves identified in prior geological surveys, resources that, if consolidated under one controlling entity, could yield millions. The HOA's enforcement pattern and Cromwell Properties acquisitions now fit into a larger financial design. 2 weeks after this discovery, Marcus awoke to the sound of machinery outside. The morning air carried a thick diesel smell, and the ground vibrated faintly beneath his porch. Stepping outside, he found a 6-foot-deep trench carved completely around his property, forming an unbroken earthen barrier. Excavators and dump trucks marked with Cromwell Excavation LLC were packing up equipment as Bethany stood nearby directing the crew. His cameras, still running, recorded the entire event, including Bethany's voice instructing workers, "Make sure it's deep enough that he can't drive out." When emergency services arrived, Fire Chief Morrison informed Marcus that his property was now classified as inaccessible for rescue vehicles. Until the trench was filled, fire and ambulance services could not guarantee response. The situation escalated further when a county inspector appeared, citing safety regulations that required the property owner to repair any excavation located within his boundaries, regardless of who performed the work. Marcus showed the inspector the surveillance footage proving that he had not commissioned or consented to the excavation, but the policy language offered no relief. He was legally responsible for restoring access at his own cost. By noon, the damage was compounded by local news coverage. Television crews framed the incident as a neighborhood dispute, portraying Bethany as a civic-minded leader maintaining community order, while implying Marcus was a volatile recluse resisting compliance. Yet within days, neighbor testimonies and Marcus's recorded footage began shifting public perception. Harold provided documentation of 3 years of targeted fines, and Sarah Chen identified discrepancies in HOA signatures consistent with forgery. What had appeared to outsiders as a property quarrel now carried the unmistakable signs of organized manipulation. The trench was no longer simply vandalism. It was the visible border of a deeper corruption buried beneath Pinedale's soil. In the aftermath of the trench incident, Marcus Whitfield focused on establishing the legal foundation of his case. While searching through boxes of his late grandmother's papers, he uncovered a manila envelope labeled HOA Incorporation, Important. Inside were the original state filing documents used to form the Pinedale Homeowners Association years earlier. The packet included a signature page declaring unanimous consent of property owners. At first glance, it appeared routine. But when Marcus compared his grandmother Eleanor Whitfield's signature on the filing to authentic examples from personal correspondence, the difference was unmistakable. Eleanor's handwriting had always been elegant, with a distinctive loop on the W and a precise flourish on the E. The signature on the incorporation form was clumsy, rushed and obviously imitated. Realizing the implications, Marcus invited his neighbor Harold to review the document. Harold immediately pointed out that his late wife Margaret's signature was also wrong. The arthritis in her hands had caused her writing to curve downward, yet the signature on the HOA form was smooth and uniform. Sarah Chen, upon examination, discovered her own name on the same filing, even though she had not purchased her property until years later. The collection of anomalies transformed suspicion into confirmation. The HOA's incorporation itself had been built on forged consent. Marcus researched federal statutes governing property filings and discovered that falsified signatures, transmitted by mail or electronically, could trigger violations of mail fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud. When tied to property control and financial gain, those offenses could escalate into racketeering under the RICO Act. Diane Kozlowski's continued investigation reinforced the connection. Using state records and survey archives, she verified that the incorporation documents containing the forged names had been officially filed through postal submission and certified by the county clerk, meaning the falsified materials had entered federal channels. This shifted the matter beyond local jurisdiction and into the realm of federal law enforcement. The discovery aligned with the geological data Marcus had previously obtained. A 2019 geological survey identified significant natural gas deposits beneath Pinedale, confirming that ownership consolidation would control mineral rights valued in the millions. The HOA's creation, its aggressive enforcement, and the pattern of coerced property transfers all intersected around the same fraudulent filings. The revelation clarified the true scale of the wrongdoing. What began as harassment over building codes had evolved into evidence of a structured criminal enterprise built on forged authority and concealed profit motives. With proof of forged signatures and years of documented harassment, Marcus Whitfield began organizing a coordinated legal and evidentiary response. His grandmother's kitchen became the operations headquarters. The oak table where she once baked bread now held stacks of labeled binders, color-coded by evidence type, property deeds, inspection notices, surveillance footage, and notarized statements. Each folder was marked by date and source to maintain a clean audit trail. The effort drew in a small but skilled team of allies. Harold's grandson, Jake, a property rights attorney working pro bono, took charge of assembling formal legal briefs. Diane Kozlowski, the retired sheriff's detective, handled investigative coordination. Sarah Chen, drawing on her background in banking and fraud analysis, traced transactions between Cromwell properties and associated accounts. Tom, Sarah's husband and a Denver Post reporter, began compiling verified documentation for a potential investigative feature. The group worked in shifts, transforming Marcus's home into a functioning command post. The assembled materials revealed an interconnected structure. Financial analysis confirmed that HOA fines and settlement payments often preceded real estate transfers to Cromwell-linked entities. Video archives correlated trespassing footage with subsequent official complaints. Signature analyses proved forgery patterns across incorporation filings. Each discovery strengthened the factual basis for federal review. Diane began liaising with enforcement agencies. The FBI opened a preliminary mail fraud investigation after reviewing the forged HOA filings sent through certified mail. The state attorney general's office assigned a prosecutor to examine real estate fraud and racketeering allegations. Environmental investigators documented unpermitted excavation linked to the trench incident. Independent surveyors verified that the trench sat entirely within Marcus's property lines, constituting clear boundary violation. Meanwhile, community awareness grew. Social media posts and neighborhood discussions encouraged other residents to share similar experiences. Within weeks, 23 families from Pinedale and nearby subdivisions confirmed receiving comparable treatment from Cromwell-controlled HOAs. Plans formed for a public town hall, where victims could present their documentation collectively. Each new discovery added weight to the case and eroded Bethany Cromwell's public credibility. Yet as federal attention intensified, retaliation also escalated. Camera interference, repeated drive-bys, and late-night noise disturbances. Marcus's team recorded everything. What began as one man's defense of inherited land had now evolved into a meticulously documented federal case study on organized property fraud disguised as community management. As the date of the public town hall approached, retaliation against Marcus Whitfield and his neighbors intensified. The first sign came through the county courthouse docket, an emergency filing accusing Marcus of assault with a deadly weapon. According to the complaint, he had threatened Bethany Cromwell with a shovel during a routine property inspection. The alleged incident had supposedly occurred while Marcus was in Denver, purchasing electrical supplies, as confirmed by a time-stamped receipt. His security footage provided decisive proof. Bethany's construction crew was recorded rehearsing their false testimony the night before, practicing statements about his violent behavior, and coordinating language about his military background. When Jake, the attorney, submitted the footage to the court, the charges collapsed instantly. Yet the episode revealed the coordinated effort to discredit him publicly. Within 24 hours, neighbors reported unmarked vehicles idling near Marcus's home. Harold discovered threatening notes on his porch warning him to stay quiet about the HOA. Sarah Chen noticed black SUVs following her children's school bus. These acts of intimidation were documented in police reports, accompanied by date-stamped photographs and video clips. Soon after, Marcus awoke to devastation in his grandmother's garden. Rows of tomato plants lay wilted and blackened, the soil giving off a sharp chemical odor. Diane Kozlowski's investigation identified the substance as commercial-grade glyphosate, mixed with industrial defoliant, a combination illegal for residential use. Surveillance audio captured Bethany instructing her partner to make sure nothing grows there again. That same week, Marcus's internet and phone service were cut under the pretext of utility line inspection. Technicians later confirmed that the lines had been deliberately severed. Days later, law enforcement executed a DEA raid on Marcus's property after an anonymous tip claimed he was running a methamphetamine lab. Agents found nothing but baking soda and cleaning supplies, materials clearly planted. The raid, filmed by local news, briefly fueled sensational coverage portraying Marcus as unstable before test results publicly cleared him. Amid the chaos, new recordings emerged. Bethany's voice was captured discussing $3 million in mineral rights and plans to flee to Costa Rica once final property transfers were complete. Her desperation culminated in the morning blockade. Construction vehicles parked across Marcus's driveway under the guise of emergency repairs. Deputies later ruled the action unlawful obstruction, and community members led by Harold organized a convoy to clear the equipment. Bethany's final tactic, hiring paid demonstrators at $200 each, collapsed when payment records surfaced. The same evidence meant to silence Marcus instead deepened the case against her. The town hall convened on a crisp Thursday evening inside the Pinedale High School auditorium. More than 280 residents crowded into seats meant for 200, while another 50 listened through speakers outside. 3 television crews, including Channel 7's Jenny Morrison, set up cameras. In the front row sat federal and state officials, FBI agent Patricia Henley and state prosecutor Michael Chang, who had reviewed preliminary evidence and came to observe the proceedings firsthand. The presentation opened not with speeches but with records. Projected onto an 85-inch screen was Eleanor Whitfield's 1943 deed, verifying that her property predated the HOA by decades and remained legally independent of it. The audience murmured as the timeline advanced through decades of peaceful ownership to the onset of Cromwell's leadership. Next came the footage of the trench excavation. Gasps filled the room as Bethany's voice echoed through the speakers. Make sure it's deep enough that he can't drive out. Her attorney tried to intervene, But the clip played in full. Financial documents followed. Cromwell Properties LLC was shown earning more than $340,000 in commissions from below-market home sales tied directly to HOA enforcement actions. Then Dr. Elizabeth Santos, a handwriting expert, presented slides comparing authentic homeowner signatures with those found on the HOA's incorporation documents. Her conclusion, 99.7% certainty of forgery, drew a wave of stunned silence. Testimony from residents humanized the numbers. Harold spoke of his wife's memorial garden destroyed under uniform landscaping orders. Sarah Chen read a letter from her 8-year-old daughter pleading not to lose her swing set or her friends. One by one, families stood to confirm similar stories of intimidation and loss. The evidence reached its peak when audio recordings played of Bethany's private remarks about controlling $3 million in mineral rights and moving to Costa Rica once profits cleared. Federal officials exchanged glances as the room erupted in disbelief. Bethany's attempt to leave mid-meeting was halted by FBI agent Henley, who stepped forward and announced her arrest for mail fraud, conspiracy to defraud, and racketeering. Her husband was detained the same evening. Following the arrests, the Pinedale HOA was dissolved by unanimous community vote. A new association with rotating leadership and verified signatures was formed within weeks. 6 months later, restitution payments exceeded $1.7 million. Colorado's legislature passed Marcus's Law, mandating independent oversight for HOA formations. The story inspired national coverage, a regional Emmy for investigative reporting, and the restoration of Pinedale's unity.